I want to talk about The Chosen this week. I've had a lot of conversations about this in recent months, both online through email and in person as well. It's a popular show. It's been controversial. It's split opinion, I would say, in many ways in the Christian church. But through those conversations, I've begun to compile some thoughts and some conclusions, and I'm interested to see if they're the same as yours, if we're on the same page as far as this goes, if there's a consensus within the Fuel Project community. I think before I talk about The Chosen directly, though, I'd like to talk in a more general sense about criticism, about Christian criticism. One of my all-time favorite quotes is by Theodore Roosevelt, and it says, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best in the end knows the triumph of high achievement, but who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat." I was maybe in my early 20s when I first read that quote, and it just resonated with me so much. I just thought, yes, in the expanse of my life which lay ahead of me, however long or short that expanse may be, I want to be known as somebody. In the end, when all is said and done, I want to be known as somebody who was in the arena. I want to spend myself in a worthy cause. My life's going to be spent anyway, so I want to spend it for something that matters. And to me, the worthiest of causes is what I do for God's kingdom. And hence, I created the Fuel Project. And I thought maybe I'll succeed, maybe I'll fail. But if I fail, at least I'll fail while daring greatly. I want to live in pursuit of God. I want to know the great enthusiasms and devotions of that. I want to be marred by dust and sweat and blood when I get to heaven, because I've simply been trying. I've been in the arena. I've been trying something. And I've also wanted to encourage others also to try. I think maybe the first time I said this was in 2013 when I made the Restless Church series. Just try something. I think if all the Christians in the world set their minds to doing something for God's kingdom, we would very quickly find ourselves in a much better place. And actually, in the original vision I had for the Fuel Project, way back in the day before I started, I hoped it would become a hub, like a facilitator, a platform, if you like, for people who wanted to try something for God's kingdom, whether that be artists, musicians, filmmakers, teachers, debaters. I wanted to make this a hub for anyone who had a pure motive and who wanted to use their gifts for God's kingdom. I'm not sure if the Fuel Project will ever get to that level, but nevertheless, I still want to see it happening around me. I still want to see people who are trying something for God's kingdom. There's so much credit in that, and I applaud and respect people who do. It's with that demeanor that I approached The Chosen. I didn't know of Dallas Jenkins before this. I didn't know his background, but from what I could gather, his intentions were good. I liked the vision, the idea of this. It seemed like a worthy endeavor. So I thought, you guys get in that arena. And yeah, you're gonna stumble, and there will be times when you could do the deeds better, and there will be critics, but that's all right. The main thing is that you're actually in the arena and that you're trying. And if your aim is to faithfully present the word of God and put it on screen to the best of your ability, God will honor those stumbling steps. I was excited to watch the first season. In fact, I binged the first season in a couple of days. I heard the critics. I understood what they were saying, especially around The Chosen using artistic license here and there. I investigated their response to that criticism, and as I understood it, what was happening was that there were parts of the biblical narrative where they just weren't sure about something. The Bible wasn't explicit about something. So they were going to a team of scholars who were basically advising them and saying, look, this is what we think could have happened in this situation. This is our best guess. And I was okay with that. It's a narrative, and if there are little gaps that the Bible doesn't explicitly explain, but you've done your absolute best to figure out what happened, if it's feasible, artistic license, I'm okay with that. As long as you're doing your absolute best to faithfully put the gospel on screen and that's your motive, then I can extend grace when you stumble or maybe where you could have done the deeds better. That's just human. Other things I enjoyed about The Chosen were the production values. Often Christian things have no budget, and you can tell they have no budget. They look amateur, but they've done a really good job crowdfunding this and getting good actors and equipment together, so it just looks really good. I applaud the effort that they've clearly put into that. I like the fact that there were some genuinely powerful moments. I welled up at times when I was watching it. I enjoyed the acting, which felt natural and real. Often in biblical adaptations, the characters seem a little bit wooden and not very realistic. They're always kind of staring off into the middle distance with a far off look in their eye, but I enjoyed that these characters felt like real people. I like the portrayal of Jesus, who was a good blend of righteousness and authority, yet who also has a kindness and a sense of humor. You can tell there's something different about him. Things like making Matthew autistic, I thought, if the scholars have a feasible reason for that, all right, it's a take. I'm not up or down about it. I think going into the second season, though, was when I began to struggle a little bit with it. It seemed to me that in the balance between staying faithful to the Bible and dramatic storytelling, they began to move a bit too much towards dramatic storytelling and put a bit too much weight on that, and therefore not enough weight on staying true and accurate to the Bible. The storyline of Mary going back into prostitution, for example, why invent that storyline? It's just not necessary. That isn't scholars doing their best to figure something out. That's just an addition for sheer drama's sake. I had issues with Jesus having to rehearse the Sermon on the Mount and then getting it wrong and having to rework it. That's artistic liberty too far, because now you're changing the nature of Jesus. You've got to be very careful and reverent what you do with the character of Jesus. But I think the moment that really killed a lot of my enthusiasm, and it's a bit of a strange one, was the preparation for the Sermon on the Mount. That scene. This kind of slapped me across the face so hard that it kind of pulled me out of the story, because it was very clear to me that they were trying to overlay 21st century sensibilities on that scene. They were essentially trying to present it as a modern day concert. They had a stage with flags. They had a backstage area. A couple of disciples were the bouncers that were stopping the non-VIPs from going back there. There's lots of people running around in the background in preparation for the big show. The women are clearly the wardrobe department. There's a scene where the women and Jesus are talking about what color to wear and what would make him stand out against the backdrop. And then Jesus goes out on stage to give his big performance. And at that point, it seemed they were trying way too hard to contort the gospel for modern audiences. It's like they were saying, hey guys, the Sermon on the Mount was like a first century rock show. Jesus was like the rock star of his day. And I just thought, you don't need to do that. You don't need to contort the Bible into a 21st century mold. Just faithfully tell the story as it's written in the Bible as best you can. That's all you need to do. Don't overlay modern sensibilities. And then once I seen that, I read a quote from Dallas Jenkins that said, our intentions are different from the Bible's intentions. He says the show contains what the audience wants or needs to see. And when I read that, I thought, oh, okay. I just thought you were trying to accurately tell the gospel story, but with this new understanding of their motives, I now looked back on all those other things where I'd previously extended grace, and I began to see those things in a slightly different light. Like there's a scene where they're very obviously trying to make a social comment about feminism. The first time I saw it, I thought, okay, that's a bit jarring and it's a bit clunkily inserted, but whatever. Let's just forget that and crack on with the story. But now I saw that in a slightly different light. It seemed they were deliberately using the gospel as a mere platform to talk about modern issues and to launch into things like feminism. I even looked back on Matthew's autism and thought, is that really because scholars thought it was a feasible thing? Or have you just stuck a neurodivergent character in your show for modern audiences because that's what you think you're supposed to do in these woke times? I just thought you were faithfully trying to present the Bible on screen. And if while doing that with the best of intentions, you were making mistakes or taking artistic license, that's okay. But if you're deliberately veering away from the Bible because it's just more dramatic storytelling to do so, or you're deliberately just using the gospel as a mere platform to launch into social commentary about modern issues like feminism, that's just not what I thought this was. So basically at the end of season 2, I just felt my natural enthusiasm for the show drop. I kept saying I'd watch season 3 when that came out, but when it came down to it, I just didn't have the excitement to actually do it. I'm not on a strop with the show or anything. I just don't have that natural excitement for it anymore. And so therefore I haven't watched any episodes since. I've spoken to a few people who have followed that same arc. And indeed, my mum and sister were massive Chosen fans, more than me. And they did continue with it into season 3. But interestingly, there was something that happened in season 3 where they felt so uncomfortable that they've decided to stop watching it as well. I don't know exactly what happened because I haven't seen that season. I think it was something to do with a miscarriage. But again, why veer from the Bible to do a miscarriage plot? I just have trouble with how they're remolding the Bible to go in these different directions and how they're playing a bit fast and loose with the biblical text. And if you do that, the danger is you can end up changing the Bible's message. So I'm in a weird place with it right now. I watched the trailer for season 4 on YouTube recently. I read lots of comments underneath from people saying they've become a Christian through watching the show. I believe one of the cast members has become a Christian through it. Many people are finding it encouraging. They're saying it's causing them to go back to their Bible with more passion. Lots of positive comments, lots of good fruit, it seems. Seems to be doing lots of good things. I want to give them credit for getting in the arena. That's my natural instinct here, because I know how hard it is to try and to create something. Having experienced this side of the fence, I'm desperate to be able to say to them, at least you're trying, you're stumbling, you're making mistakes, but at least you're in the arena. But personally, I've just lost my personal enthusiasm for it. I just no longer trust that they're faithfully trying to tell the gospel story accurately anymore, and therefore I've lost my interest. It's just not what I thought it was. I also note that other controversies regarding the Mormons, the Catholics, the presence of a pride flag on set, and this other comment where one of the writers apparently said he thought the Bible was good literature but not infallible, and that perhaps explains why they're playing so fast and loose with it. Stuff like that. So I just don't feel comfortable going forward with it myself, and that's my personal arc with The Chosen. But I'm really interested to hear your viewpoints on this. I don't normally do this. I don't normally make an appeal like this to get into the comment section. But if you do have anything to add to this discussion, I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts, because as you can probably tell, I've got some mixed feelings here, and I'd like to get some kind of feedback and discussion from you guys about what you think and what your arc has been with The Chosen.